Brother. Oh no.
Oh, for real? Oh, it just started saying it's recording now.
Oh fuck! It just dropped out. Sweet. Fucking start again.
Damn.
Welcome back to the Open Up Podcast, guys, and to episode 41 with Jesse Wynyard, influencer, speaker, life coach, and the mind behind Awaken the Alpha. My man, thank you for taking the time to do this.
Thanks, brother.
Um, quick question to start off with: how would you describe yourself and the services you offer?
That's a great question, bro. Um, I I am basically a life coach. So I run a company called Awaken the Alpha, and we work with literally thousands of people from all around the world, transform their mindset, reprogramming the mindset, transforming the body, and ultimately living a life of success, health, wealth, happiness, and fulfillment. So that's pretty much what I'm passionate about, and through my story, which we're obviously going to probably talk about soon. That's kind of how I got into what I'm doing now.
It's awesome, bro. It's powerful and it's needed. And we're actually connected by the last guest, who was Tony Versich of Tony Body,
Yep.
who said you're actually one of his best mates and one of his inspirations. So
Yep.
thanks for not only inspiring men and women all over the world, but for inspiring Tony, who
Yeah.
in turn inspires me.
Yeah. Me and Tony, we go way back. We started working together probably about 6 years ago now. I think I met him when I was 19. We were working on cruise ships at the time as personal trainers.
Oh,
And
yep, that explains it.
yeah. So we started in the same like personal training intake, and they were teaching us how to do like seminars and do public speaking and stuff. And we were complete noobs at the time, so we were like we became best mates through that.
It's awesome, bro. You guys must have learnt well because both of you are sort of in the upper echelon at the moment. I
Mm,
guess in this fitness now, it's like a combo of fitness and mental health at the moment.
yep,
It
yep,
seems to be where like the influence is and the power is. So
yep.
congrats on taking that learning and fucking spawning it into this.
Yeah, I remember last year because we started the whole online thing about 2 years ago, and we were obviously in like personal trainers before that, and we took our businesses online. And I remember at the time we are talking about how we can innovate, how we can be different, and how we can really help people. And I remember at the time it was all about the fitness, the bodybuilding scene was like massive, like the men's physique
Yeah,
competitive scene was massive. I was a men's physique competitor myself. So that was what was kind of like at the top of the industry at the time, and we're kind of thinking about, okay, how can we really help people opposed to just giving them training and nutrition plans, getting them shredded, like what else can we do? And then obviously throughout our journeys, we realized that we had a lot of internal stuff that we needed to work on to become better coaches, and a lot of the lessons that we had to learn through that, we decided to teach our clients. So then that's when the mindset came into it. And I remember us actually having a conversation where I said to him, I was like, within the next 12 months, everyone's going to be doing this. And 12 months, 2 years later, it's like mental health is such an important thing. So it's so cool to see that that's the direction that the industry is going. It's not just health and fitness anymore. It's health and wellness, and everything else kind of comes below that.
yeah, that's awesome, bro. And I'm grateful that both of you are doing what you're doing because, like I said, it is needed, and especially with men. Like, I'm not too sure what the suicide rate or the depression anxiety rate is in New Zealand, but it's like one in five in Aussie experience depression, 2 in 5 experience anxiety,
Hmm.
and then it's something ridiculous,
Yep.
man. Like I think it was 8,000 people or something a year. Actually, don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
I read a post off Happiness Co.
Yeah. 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 It's
um,
pretty massive, bro. Like, and I deal with a lot of people like that, bro. Like, I've had multiple conversations literally within the last with people that are have either tried to commit suicide or have had friends or or family members that have committed suicide, and you know, from someone that's kind of experienced those types of thoughts in the past, as bro, it's very needed, especially in the society that we live in. So, you know, we kind of set up for it. You know, there's not enough, like the way that the social system's set up. You know, it's pretty understandable as to why there's so much of these insecurities and this self-doubt, and you know, the depression and the anxiety and the way that we live, you know. So like you said, bro, really needed it. Yeah.
With all of that, like with having people reaching out to you with these sort of stories and these thoughts, I found it hard, especially like doing this podcast. People feel compelled to reach out because they see you as someone that can help, someone that hears these stories and knows these lessons like off by heart. Now, how do you deal with not being trapped in this state of wanting to help everyone and basing like your ego or your identity on actually helping these people? Because that's something I've found hard.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, bro. And honestly, the way I'd answer that is, because I've been working with like so many people for so many years, there was that big phase, like you just said, that I felt like I needed to help everyone. Like, because I felt, because I was able to help people, and because I've been able to help myself to a certain degree, everyone that I would talk to, I would be able to see the pain, you know, because I've experienced so much pain within myself. I see it all the time with my clients. So when I would have a conversation at a party or at the gym or, you know, whatever, I could kind of see that, you know, they're suffering some kind of way. And then because I can see that, I'm putting that energy out there. And what happens is the person that I'm talking to can feel the energy, and then, you know, they start to slowly open up, right? And then like you said, I feel compelled to help the person. And the way in which I've kind of learned to overcome that, and this was only kind of recently, like this last year, was learning how to protect my energy, bro. Because when you're constantly giving to other people, when you're constantly and you base your identity, like you said, around giving out to other people all the time, it's draining, bro. It's so draining. And what I've come to realize is, you know, I've learned a lot about myself, and you know, I've got a lot of tools, and I know how to help people. I do, but there's still so much learning to do, for every single one of us. You know, it doesn't matter how enlightened you are, doesn't matter how, you know, how advanced you are on this path of, you know, personal development and self-discovery. There's so much to learn, and we really don't know that much. So we only know a little bit, you know. So understanding that I'm still a student just as much as everyone else is, and in order for me to be able to still, you know, continue on my own personal journey of discovery, you know, I have to be able to learn how to invest the energy when it's needed, and to preserve the energy when it's not necessarily needed. When the time arises, if someone's there, they really need help, they ask for it, I'll be there. But I'm not going to go around searching for people everywhere I go to be that person, because it ends up being drained. And I heard a quote that's kind of stuck with me from one of my mentors. He told me, in order to give to others, you must fill your own cup first, right? And give to the others from the overflow. And you know, that's why I think it's so important to be able to just, you know, protect your energy first, and then pick and choose where you decide to distribute that energy, especially when it comes to expressing that you know, awareness through, you know, these types of platforms, like, you know, podcasts. You know, that's why I created a business around it, because if I could create a living off helping people, then that's where I put the energy, and then everywhere else I go, I just enjoy my life. You know, like there's no need to merge my professional work with my personal work, unless it arises. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think to answer your question, bro, it comes down to protecting my energy and making sure that I'm 100, so that I can give to others.
That's awesome, bro.
Yeah,
it's like self-love, and then what better way to make money than, you know, loving yourself first and then providing value with that overflow. That's awesome.
100%, bro. 100%.
Okay, let's dive straight into your first story, which starts in childhood.
Mm.
Did you want to walk us through that?
Yeah, bro. Yeah. So I had a pretty intense childhood, eh? Where do I begin? So basically, I was I was born into a very negative environment from the very get go. Um, I experienced a lot of emotional trauma and generational trauma when I was a kid. And the way I experienced that was my father was very abusive, very violent, mentally and physically, to both myself and my mom. So up until the age of 5, for the first 5 years of my life, me and my mom were basically on the run from my
Oh,
father. So
okay.
so we live in New Zealand, and we I was born in Auckland, and basically what happened is we ran away from him for like 5 years straight, all the way down the country, and we were staying in like different women's refuges, um, and a lot of those first 5 years I can barely remember. Um, Through a lot of self therapy and deep meditations and stuff like that, I'm able to kind of tap into little parts of that memory, but there's a lot of stuff that went on that I just completely subconsciously blocked out. And by the time I was, I think I was like 5 or 6 years old, we had settled down back in Auckland. He came in and out of our lives a little bit, and I can imagine as a mother, in my mother's shoes, it's pretty hard being a single parent, and you've got this person coming in constantly trying to come into your life. So it was pretty intense. There's a lot of violence. Like I said, I witnessed a lot of real traumatizing stuff, and yeah, basically, as I grew a little bit older, I remember the last day I saw my dad. I was probably about 6 years old, and he just kind of he was with us for a period of time, probably about maybe a few weeks or a month. Can't even really remember. And I remember him, like the vision of him walking out and just never really seeing him again. And that abandonment that happened to me at that time, it really, looking back on it now, reflecting on it now, it really affected me. And what happened is a lot of those behaviors that I was brought up around, the abandonment, like running away, and the anger, the violence, it was passed on to me because that's all I knew. I was
Yeah, of
raised in.
course.
Yeah, yeah. And what happened was, through the school, like as when I went into the schooling system, and through primary and intermediate, as I went into high school, I developed a really um, rebellious mindset because I didn't have a father figure there to teach me, what I needed to learn as a young boy. I didn't have anyone to teach me about confidence. I didn't have anyone to teach me about discipline and getting shit done. There was no discipline instilled from my mom, and because of that, I took advantage of that because I was the alpha, right? At the time,
Yeah,
I was the man of the house, even though I was like 10 years old. So because of that, I would take advantage of that, and I grew this real egotistical, um, quite angry yet very insecure personality persona, and I took that into high school, and it was really interesting because I was real like, if you knew me in high school, man, I was like a completely different person. I was very very insecure, very very shy. I was not confident at all. Could
well,
barely string a sentence together. I remember, like, and because of that insecurity, I would never. I'd find it really hard to make friends and fit in because I was always constantly comparing myself to others, and this is from a very young age, and yeah, basically, it got to a point where, you know, around high school, around, I think I was about 15 or 16, I got the idea that, I just don't want to be here. So I started wagging school, hanging around with the wrong people. So I started obviously attracting people into my life that were
yeah,
similar, that were, had the same type of mindset, same type of upbringings, and they weren't necessarily positive people. So I got involved at drugs and alcohol and um, violence at a very young age, around 15, 16 years of age, and that was just kind of I kind of identified with with that part of me. I was very, very, very victim mentality, very victim
yeah.
mentality.
I think something I just want to touch on something you said about like not having a, I think what Tony called it was a mentor, like a male mentor growing up. Um, like you said, you didn't have anyone to instill that confidence or to teach you how to get shit done, or to actually how to be the alpha of the house. But I guess what you did learn from him was how to force your way into people's lives and how to be aggressive and
Yep.
take shit out on the people you love. And
Exactly, and what you just said is 100% true, because my relationship with my mom was not great, because anytime I would feel attacked in any way, or anytime I victimized myself in any way with whatever it was, whether it was getting told what to do or wagging school or whatever I was doing wrong, um, I would get really angry and I would have like anger outbursts, like and I remember one of my very first relationship that I had, um, yeah, my very first relationship, my proper relationship that I had, which was around I was around 15 years of age. It was the same type of thing, very very angry. Now I wasn't that wasn't my dominant behavior. I wasn't like this real angry guy walking around. It was like a deeply suppressed behavior. So
okay,
on the outside, I wasn't acting like the alpha. I was very insecure. I was very if you saw me, you would know me as the shy guy. I wasn't like a out there personality by any means. But when I felt threatened, I would lash out, and I'd lash out to my mom. I'd lash out to my partner. The relationship itself that I was in was very toxic, and I was definitely not the only one doing the wrong in that relationship. There was a lot of deception, a lot of cheating on both ends. It was just toxic young relationship with two people that just weren't ready. Two people
yeah,
that had been raised in um, quite negative environments, and somehow attracted each other and just wasn't ready. And I learned a lot from it, and I don't regret it by any means. Um, but yeah, that was just the way I was,
yeah.
all the way up,
With
and yeah, yeah,
I think you said you had like an issue with comparison throughout school, comparing yourself to others.
mm,
Um, we're looking back now. Obviously, you've done a tremendous amount of work on
mm.
yourself and gone back with timelines and psychedelics to remedy the sort of stuff and to learn from it. Do you have an idea of where that comes from, and if there was like an underlying feeling of not being good enough?
You mean the comparisons? They're not feeling good
Yeah.
enough. 100%. Um, it was honestly, it was just really never getting taught how to what to do, like how to like we were saying before, how to be a man, how to be confident, how to stick up for yourself, how to be assertive, all of these things that are required in this type of world that we live in. How to believe in yourself, I never really got taught how to do that. My mom did an amazing job. She did the best she possibly could. She was an amazing person, but again, she had a lot of her own insecurities. We were very poor, so we never had a lot of money. We're always in a lot of debt. My mum was always in a lot of debt, very stressed out a lot of the time. But she always taught me gratitude, and she always taught me, a lot of the values and the philosophies that I still hold to this very day. But because of her insecurities and because of her struggles, that was what I was raised with. So I was
Yeah.
raised with like never having enough. I was raised with you know, and I would have friends at school that had fathers and they had full families, had big houses, and they had the nice clothes, and there was always just this part of me deep down that was just always comparing, like, oh, that person has nice clothes and that person has a lot of money, that person has a dad, but like I don't have any of this stuff, you know. So that's where I think it came from, bro. Like not having you know, feeling like I wasn't complete. I didn't have a complete life.
Okay. Yeah.
Growing up, that's what it felt like, and it's really interesting that you say that, because you know talking about it now, I can easily identify this. But these behaviors that we are raised with, especially in those first 5 to 10 years of our life, they're so deeply ingrained into us. They're so deeply programmed that the behaviors still arise at times, right?
Yeah.
So even though, like you said, right now I've done a lot of work and I'm a completely different person, the behaviors still come up in certain points. If there's a time of scarcity, you know, there's a behavior that will rise, and I'll be aware of it, and then it's up to me to be able to push it away and let it go, which has been a big process, and it's taken a lot of practice, to be able to get to this point. So yeah, to answer your question, bro, I think it was just not having all of these things that I saw everyone else have, which included like father and things and money and houses, just all these things,
That's a really cool insight, man. It's something I never would have attributed to that or not being good enough or that comparison.
Yeah, that's where it comes from, bro.
I guess you started talking about like your mixing with the wrong crowds, attracting the wrong people. Did you want to walk us from there? I'm not too sure whether
Yeah.
you brought it up, whether you ran away from home already, but
Yeah. So that was pretty much very close after. So basically, man, going through high school, I had this rebellious mindset, and one of the big things that I've kind of overcome recently is procrastination, right? I think we all have a bit of procrastination.
Yeah.
But that was one of the big things that I really like kind of broke through this year, is why I have it. And the procrastination that I was able to link back was because I was never disciplined, So I never had to do my homework. If I didn't go to school, I wouldn't get in trouble for it. I would go, like I said, I was very dominant in towards my mom. So like I would just go away from home and hang out with like people for a few nights, and just like 16 years of old, and just not come home, and she'll be like worried sick, and I just wouldn't have any real negative repercussions. So that same type of mindset, it made me realize that I didn't want to be in school, and it was a blessing and a curse, because the blessing was, I dropped out of, sorry, the curse was that I had this behavior that started to go into all of the other areas of my life. Like when it came to money, when I started making money later on, that same type of non-disciplined mindset was there. When I had deadlines to meet, that same non-disciplined mindset was there. But the blessing was that, the blessing and curse in a way was that when I was in high school, age of 17, I was about sixth form. I realized that I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to go to university. There's nothing that I'm passionate about here. The way I saw it at that age is I would rather go, like, drop out of high school, find a job, make money, because my mum was struggling with money all the time, and I saw that, so I was like, I would rather go and make money and help my mum than stay here doing something that I just know for a fact that I'm not passionate about. And at the same time, there was a lot of my friends at the time that were doing the same thing. So a lot of my friends as well at the time were a lot older. So they were, I always hung out with older crowd. And by the time I was around 17 years of age, most of my closer friends had already left. They were already like gone off to university or just finished school. So because of that, a combination of that mindset, that feel, that not wanting to be there, and all of my friends, doing like working, doing other things, going to university, or just, going into that next level of life, I was just like, what, I'm done. My mum was supportive of it. She respected because I went to her and I said, I just don't want to be here anymore, and she respected it. So she let me do it. And I remember sixth form, I dropped out. Sorry, my last year of high school, I dropped out. I was 17 years of age, and I actually, for a while there, I was on a pretty good path. I had a newfound sense of responsibility. I got a job with one of my older brothers as a painter, and then eventually after a few months of painting, I got a job as a salesman for telecom, or it was called Telecom back in the days. It's called Spark now, but it's a telecommunications company here in New Zealand. And I got a job as a salesman, and that's where I learned how to sell. I learned how to I learned how to communicate. And I was just kind of chucked into the deep end. It was a commission only job, and I had this mindset that I was like, what, I'm gonna just go all in on this, and I'm gonna do really good at it, and I'm gonna learn how to sell, and I'm gonna be the best at it. And I had that, and that's what that independence that I had, and the fact that I was so young, and I knew that I had a lot of potential within me. It really helped me. It really helped me learn those skills at such a young age: communication, sales, talking to people. I was
Yeah.
door knocking every single day, and I got really good at it. I got really, really good at it. I became one of the top salesmen in my team. I was making pretty good money for like a 17-year-old. But coming to, going back to what I was saying before, that mindset that I had of non-discipline was
Yeah.
still there. So I would, the same way as I would turn up late to school, I'd turn up late to work. The same way I'd wag school, I'd wag work. The same way I'd go out and get drunk on school nights, I'll go out and get drunk and do drugs on work nights. And because I had money, I was making money. I was making like $1,000 a week, which was not bad for a 17-year-old. I was just spending it all on just the stupidest shit. Like within a couple of days, it'd be gone. So eventually, what happened after like 6 months of working there, I got fired. I got fired because I just, even though I was good at what I was doing, I just was not disciplined with myself. I was, and I was a victim mentality. Like my boss would constantly say to me, you got a warning, like you need to stop doing this, but I just wouldn't listen because I never had any repercussions growing up. So
Yeah.
valuable lesson to learn. And after
So
that,
is that really one of the first times that you had that discipline instilled, or you'd suffered the repercussions of
yeah,
like your ill discipline?
yes, definitely. And so basically what happened is I got fired. I tried my best to get my job back. They didn't have it. They didn't want it. So what happened was I went into a pretty bad depression after that, because it kind of reinforced the fact. It kind of made me second guess everything that I was doing. It reinforced the negative self-talk and the self-doubt that I already had within me from a young age, because I never really had that confidence. So, what happened was I ended up doing a lot of drugs, drinking a lot, didn't go back to school, didn't really try and find a job. And basically this was kind of one of the biggest rock bottom points for me in my life was, at the time when I got fired from my job. What happened was, at the time, that relationship that I was talking about before, I was still in it. So I've been in that relationship for a couple of years at that point,
Yeah.
on and off. But yeah, so we're pretty deep into the relationship at that point, and it was quite toxic. There was a lot of arguing, and yeah, it just wasn't very nice. And basically, what happened was, I remember there was a day, and my mum was yelling at me because of something. I can't quite remember what it was. And then I was on the phone to my girlfriend at the time, and she was yelling at me through the phone, right? So I so I had
Nice.
all the two females in my life and at the time they were like kind of on the same side, right? So I kind of felt like I was being attacked. So kind of look at it like this, you have a 17-year-old kid who's just done all this stuff wrong, victim mentality, no discipline, anger problems, getting ganged up on by his mom and his girlfriend. In that moment, I flipped, and that's when I had my very first, like, anger, rage outburst, like panic attack. Essentially, it was
Oh, wow.
It was like a panic attack, but combined with rage, right? So I just lost my shit. I remember seeing red. Okay, I remember seeing the color red, and I remember just like the emotions just took over my body, and I just lost my shit. I remember the first thing I did is I picked up my chair, I threw it through the window, smashed the whole window, um, and I kicked a hole in my door, punched a hole in the wall, went
Jeez.
out went out into the lounge. The lounge that I was living, the house that I was living in, there was a lounge, and there was like a sliding glass door, right? And I remember just punching my hand straight through it. And when I pulled my hand out, my wrist was splurting with blood. It was just splurting out, right? Because there was a piece of glass that got stuck on my wrist. I don't know if you can see this, but
Oh, yeah, I
there's
can see that.
a scar
Fuck.
right there that I've still got, and it was just bleeding. It was just like splurting up blood. It was crazy. And once I'd done that, once I punched that hole in that glass and smashed the window, and I was screaming, and I was I looked at my wrist, I snapped out of it, and I looked around my house, and I realized what I had done. My mum was on the road, crying on the phone to the police. Um, all the neighbors were out on the road, like what the fuck's going on? And I was just like, holy shit! And I just like felt so guilty and scared and all these different emotions that I just packed the bag and I left. I just left, blood splatting out of my wrist, and I just kept it. Left my house, and I left for about 8 months. I didn't come back, and I got my friends to pick me up. They took me to the A&E, the emergency center. They stitched up my hand, and the doctor told me that if the glass had made it 1 millimeter to the left, it would have got my artery, and I would have bled out and died within like 10 minutes, if it had. But it was 1 millimeter to the right. So I was like very, very, very lucky not to have just killed myself. Um, and yeah, basically from there, man, like I got stitched up, and I was just kind of homeless for about 8 months. I was living between my girlfriend's house, and living, which I wasn't supposed to be doing. I was living at like on friends' couches, and yeah, that was like probably one of the lowest of all lows that I've been through.
Wow.
And for 8 months, I was just, doing drugs every night, doing smoking weed every day, ecstasy, cocaine, drinking constantly, getting into fights, going out as much as I possibly could, and just, yeah, man, just wasn't a healthy lifestyle at all. So
Jesus. Yeah.
yeah.
We've got a couple questions. I want to go back to you talking about when you start doing this salesman role at telecom, and you're talking about deciding to be the best and deciding to make good money,
Mm,
considering it's commission based, and you're starting to knock on doors.
mm-hmm.
Considering you had no confidence, you weren't raised with confidence beforehand, and now you're in this position where you're going to knock on doors. I can imagine that's like the heart in your mouth moment. That's
Yep,
the hardest thing to do, is go and knock on someone's door, like
yep,
in their place where they feel safe and comfortable, and ask for money. Was
yep.
that a mask, that confidence you used then, looking back now?
Yes,
Considering like you
I guess
lost
it
that
was.
confidence again when you lost the job?
I honestly, I guess it was. It was the way I looked at it was my opportunity to, really, um, become someone else, because for the last however many years I was, living, I wasn't, I felt like I wasn't reaching my potential. And something that my mum always taught me was that, you've got so much potential. She would always say, like, from a very young age, she'd always just tell me, you're going to do great things. You're going to do great things. Despite how, despite the negative aspects to myself, she was always so supportive, and would always say that. So because of that, that thing, that seed that she planted, there was a part of me that really did believe in myself. And when I got that job, my mum was so proud of me, and I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna make my mum proud. So it was almost like, you know, I knew that I wasn't confident, and I knew that I was quite insecure. Um, this wasn't something I would talk about all the time. It was just all very internal. Like right now, I can talk about it, but like back then,
Yeah.
it was very internal. So I didn't quite. I just thought that that's how life was. I didn't really know, what was how you were supposed to be. And I think when I went into that position and I got that opportunity, it was like, you know, it was like the universe or God had given me an opportunity to do something with my life. And
Yeah.
it was like an opportunity that I had. And when I got that opportunity, it was like a fresh start. It was like a brand new chapter for me. And it was the first time I kind of felt that feeling of like, I'm going to, do something with my life. I got this. And I guess because it was a brand new environment, I don't know anyone there. Actually, I lie. I had one friend there who actually helped me get the job. He was a bit older, and he was doing really well. Okay, and we were really good mates. And I saw him doing really, really well, and I was like, you know what? If he can do it, right, then I can do it, 100%. And then that was the mindset that I had. So I kind of just went in with like an open mind. I was just, you know what? I'm just gonna give this a go. And it wasn't easy, but I got pretty good at it. Like I said, I actually learned it because of that open mind that I had. I was able to take on board advice. I actually started reading, sales books at the time, and just like really trying to learn about it.
Cool.
Because I wanted to get to get good at it. So yeah.
Well, so you actually used self-development. So you went out on a limb yourself, learnt all you could to actually instill the confidence in yourself, something you had missed from not having that father figure in your life.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, definitely. It was, like I said, first time I felt like I had an opportunity to be something.
It's
So
awesome, bro.
yeah.
One thing I want to touch on, which is I feel is super important anyway, and something that's impacted me as well, is just those little words that your parents tell you over and over again throughout your life, something that you might think is insignificant, like your mum telling you there's something special in you. My mother always told me I was meant to be a healer because she went to a psychic one day when I was little, and the psychic
Bro,
told her I was a healer.
it's so funny because my mum said the exact same thing. Not the psychic thing, but she said that one day I was going to heal thousands of people.
Yeah,
It's so buzzy that you said that.
it is, man. But like, I really feel like when someone who loves you, someone you care about, tells you something like that, they embed it in your subconscious. And like,
Mhm.
I've never let go of that, no matter how depressed I've felt, no matter how down I've felt. Like, I've
Mm.
always felt like I was meant to heal. And I think that's the reason I'm doing this. And it's probably the same for you. That's the reason you're doing Awaken the Alpha.
100%, 100%, bro.
It's cool, man. I guess going back to your story, you've literally come like full circle now, bro. Like, you had you and your mum when you were little, running away from your father, um, that uncertainty, bouncing from place to place down the country. Now you've run away from home. You've run away from the problem at home, and you're bouncing from your partners to your friends' houses.
Mm.
That's insanity, man. Like, how did you snap out of that, or how did you pull yourself out of that position, being so young?
Yeah. So, like I said, for about 8 months, I was living a pretty self-destructive lifestyle. Got involved with some really, it was just a really dangerous lifestyle, bro. Like, I remember we got involved with like the wrong people, um, and it got to the point where my life, was starting to become threatened. Like, I was becoming paranoid and scared for my life,
Yeah,
which wasn't a good place to be at 17 years of age. And at the time, a lot of my friends, like there was a couple of my friends that I was with that were kind of in the same mindset, but a lot of my other friends were doing things. One of my good mates was an MMA fighter. He just started um, training for MMA. He was at university. I had a couple of mates that were at uni, a couple of mates that were working. When I'd always, would always go over to their houses, and they would have their own house, and they would have, like PlayStation and cool phones, and that's when iPhones were just becoming a thing. So they had again, it was like they had all these things, right? It was like going back to a high school, that comparison. I was aware of what I didn't have, but it was a slow process. Like, I was in a very victim mentality for a long time. I was blaming my mom, I was blaming my girlfriend, I was blaming my dad, I was blaming the education system, I was blaming society. I was very negative about everything, and that was just simply because of the environment that I was in. And it was just, there was a part of me that was just very aware of how everyone was doing quite well, and I was almost like I was waiting for something to come along. I was waiting
yeah,
for an opportunity. I was waiting for someone to offer me a job, or I was waiting. I had this hope that something would happen. Um, but it got to a point, and it was actually New Year's. I think New Year's 2011. 2011 it was. I think, yeah, 2011. 2011 to 2012. It got to that New Year's, and we went to a festival. Somehow I got a ticket to a festival up in the North Island of New Zealand. A whole bunch of me and my mates went up there, um, and got obviously really drunk and doing drugs and all the things that you do as a teenager. And it was New Year's. It was New Year's, right? And it was the end of that year. That year of, I dropped out of high school. Had a couple of jobs, failed, ran away from home, and I hadn't seen my family in ages. I was missing my mum, obviously, and it was the first Christmas that I didn't spend with my family as well. So I felt really lonely, and really depressed. There's a lot of depression, that I was masking with the drugs and
Yeah.
the partying and stuff. And it was, I remember in that moment, I was talking to one of my mates who was doing really well for himself at the time. He was in his second to last year of university. He was, he was just doing, he was like inspirational, to me at the time. He was an inspiration, and he's still one of my really good mates today. And basically, what happened was, we had a conversation, and he was just like, he's like, you know what, you're better than this. You're better than this. You can do way better. You're not like any of these other guys. You've got potential. And all it really comes down to is just deciding what you want to do. Like, just decide what it is that you want to do and do it. Just don't wait for anything. And when he told me that, when I had that conversation, it was the first time really ever where I was able to talk to, get advice from a male figure, even though he was one of my good mates. And it resonated with me because I never had that ever before, like someone say, you can do it. And it was almost like it took me 17 years or 18 years to get someone to say that they believed in me. That wasn't my mom.
Yeah.
To say that they believed in me, for me to be like, oh shit, I can do it. Like he's right. And we had this massive conversation that night, and honestly, it changed my life. And it was just a conversation with one of my mates. And I realized that if I wanted to be something, I made the realization that if I wanted to be something in my life, and if I wanted to live up to this potential that I knew that I had deep down within, that my mom had, the seed that my mom planted a long time ago, then no one was going to do it for me. I have to do it for myself. So what happened was, New Year's resolution, bro. January 1st, I was like, you know what? I'm going back home. I rang my mom. I asked if I could come back. She said yes. I packed all my bags and I went home. I went home and I apologized, and I just broke down crying to her, and I was just, saying I was sorry, and how I wanted to change my life around, and I'm done with what I was doing. And she took me back. And that next year was a massive shift, and that's when things started to change rapidly for me, because I had that I had the seed that was planted that I can do this, and it's up to me. So because it's up to me now what am I going to do? And I remember I was having a conversation with my mom. She shared a book with me called The Secret. I'm not sure if you've read it.
Yeah.
It's a pretty popular book, and it talked about the law of attraction and goal setting and visualization and all this kind of stuff. And it just opened up a whole brand new world for me when I read this, because I was like, wow, if I want to create this dream life of mine, if I want to really do well in my life, all it comes down to is just writing down some goals. Is that how easy it is? So I was like, okay, cool. So I was like, okay, what I want to do, what do I want to do in my life? And at that point, I had been training for a long time. I've been exercising for ages. So I've been training since I was about 14 years of age. I started
Yep.
training really young because I was real skinny, and I used to get teased and bullied for being skinny when I was a kid. So by that point, I was, I've been training for about 4 years at that point, and I put on a bit of muscle and, built a bit of confidence in the gym, and I knew how to train. I was like, you know what? This is the one thing that's helped me, that I've stayed consistent with throughout this whole process. Um, you know, and it's kept me sane. It's probably kept me alive, to be honest. I could probably help other people with this. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to become a personal trainer. So I wrote down the goal, become a personal trainer, because I was writing down my goals every day.
Yeah.
And then long story short, bro, within a couple of weeks of that January 1st, I got accepted into a personal training college, and I was really lucky that this college, it's called Max College for International Fitness Professionals, and it was like the qualification was a fitness business diploma, and I was like, cool, I get a business diploma, I can learn, become a personal trainer, and I was very, very fortunate that when I went to this place, they, it's not, you don't get this often, but they taught us about the law of attraction, right? Crazy, right? So I learned about
That's
the law of
sick,
attraction from
man.
this book, and then I went to this course, and they were teaching us about visualization. They're teaching us about affirmations. They're teaching us about the subconscious mind, all these things, and it was amazing. I was just like, and it was just like, when you learn about manifestation and you just start to build that momentum, and
Yeah.
everything just starts to change. That was for me. So I was just riding this wave, and when I was in that course that I was doing, every single day we had to stand up in front of our class, and we had to say to the class what our dream life was in the present tense. practicing that, here and the now, I've already got it. And because I didn't really know what I wanted, but every single day, the only thing that I wanted to do was make a lot of money. And I wanted to travel to different countries around the world. That was what I knew I wanted to do. So what happened was every single day I stood up and I said, I'm an international, I said I was a fitness model. I was an international fitness model that makes over $2,000 per week traveling to countries all around the world. And that was what I said every single day because that's all I wanted to do. And honestly, bro, within 3 months, I was doing that, and I got the dream job manifested. And within 3 months of the first of January, I was on a plane to, where was I going to Europe, and I worked around the world for about a year.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
It's something I think a lot of people could benefit from, is having that sort of knowledge handed to them or taught to them within like the education or school curriculum, right? It's immensely powerful knowing that if you visualize something, if you attach that emotion to your visualization, if you constantly embed in your subconscious that it's going to happen, your mind's going to find a way to make it happen.
Exactly. It should be taught in schools. Like, why isn't it?
Exactly,
and that's the question. And that that's the question that we really have to ask. Like, why aren't we taught about this kind of stuff in society? Why aren't we taught about personal development? Why aren't we taught about goals and values and all of these things? Because imagine if we were able to teach that to all the kids growing up, the world would be completely different.
That's awesome, bro. So you pretty much used, like, again, you had that mentor, really, I'd say a mentor, but like someone who guided you in the right direction, who gave you the confidence, who gave you the advice, and really instilled that belief in you, the first person besides your mum. Something you probably needed from your father, but it took 17 years, but luckily you got it from this guy, and you made that decision then and there to go back to your mum's and then learn yourself, enroll in this course and then learn through that. You picked up the secret and the teachings from that course, and you really manifested what you wanted, which is super powerful. I guess we can move on to the next story, and probably the most traumatic for you in your life to date. Did you want to walk us through that?
Yeah. So basically, I worked on the cruise. So I got a job as a personal trainer on the cruise ships. That's where I met Tony. That's where I met Tony, and basically, I traveled to over 24 different countries. We were public speaking. That's where I learned how to speak. We were public speaking in front of anywhere between 20 and 100 people, 3 or 4 times per week. That's how we made money on the cruise ships. So we were like selling supplements, and we're doing a lot of health seminars and stuff. So that's where I really developed the passion. Listened to a lot of Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins was my mentor for that entire year. He just dived deeper into the whole teachings of manifestation and recreating your identity and all this kind of stuff. And I really developed the true vision of what I wanted to be doing through that year, which was amazing. Now, what
Put
happened?
the mic closer, cuz.
Oh yeah, sorry, bro.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
All good.
Yep. So yeah, throughout the year, there was a lot of growth. It was probably one of the biggest years of growth for me, in my life, was that 1 year on the cruise ships, because I was thrown into the deep end by myself, and I just had to make it work, and I did, and it was amazing. Now,
And was the environment like that? Like, considering that you'd come from a negative environment initially, was the environment better on that cruise ship?
It was a combination. So we were in a very sales and numbers driven environment. So there's a lot of pressure to make money for the company. And as a result of making for the money, you make good money for yourself. So I had that same fire within me that was like, what, I'm going to be the best at this. And literally within 3 or 4 months, I became the top revenue producing speaker out of, like, I think it was about 80 to 90 people in my cruise, my fleet of cruise lines. There's about 80 personal trainers in that fleet, and
That's wicked, man.
I became number one. I was 18, and And I had this pretty clear vision as to what I wanted to do. About 6 months into my contract, I got a phone call from my girlfriend at the time, and she told me that she was pregnant. So basically, I found out that I was going to be a dad, and I was only 19 years of age, and I had to kind of process that. When I finished my contract and I went back to New Zealand, was a couple of weeks before he was born, my son, and yeah, my son was born, right? And I had these big visions and dreams of wanting to like pursue this like cruise ship life, and keep pursuing that and do multiple contracts to come and keep traveling the world. But then I had a son, and I watched him
Yeah.
being born, and I was like, I can't leave. I can't just leave and abandon because that was what happened to me. I can't be that guy. So what I decided to do was I decided to stay, um, and be a father, and I decided to stay with in that same relationship that I was in for about up until that was about 6 years, 5 or 6 years now. Um, I just decided to stay, and I became a manager of a supplement company here in New Zealand. It's called NZ Muscle. It's probably the biggest supplement company in the country now, and I was managing that at the age of 19. It was a great job, um, and then basically, after about a year, I think it was about a year of working for that other company, I felt like I was just, wasn't fulfilling my purpose. I wasn't fulfilling my dream. I still had this untapped potential, and I realized that I wasn't, happy doing what I was doing. So I decided to leave that manager position, even though it was an amazing paycheck, heaps of perks, great company. But decided to leave and start my own business at the age of how old was I? 20 years of age. Um, and yeah, then I actually started my own personal training business, and went from there. Um, Now, after a couple of years of doing that, built my business up, was great. Built a big successful boot camp business, became a fully booked trainer. I started competing, so
Yeah.
I started bodybuilding and getting into the competitive industry as a men's physique athlete. Um, and a couple of years later, and it was great. I was just it was a pretty good life at that point. I had my son. I was in this relationship. It still wasn't the best relationship, but we're making it work because of our son. And I think that's like a lot of relationships these days, is
Yeah.
they just make it work. Because of the kids, and that was us. But it was still a lot of there's still a lot of negative history with us. There's a lot of like toxicity, a lot of arguments still, not as much, but it was still there.
Yeah. Were
And then
you do you feel like you stayed because you didn't have your father around or you didn't have that male mentor, and do you feel like you
yes,
fulfilled that role?
yes, I felt like I was obligated to do that because I didn't want to be like my father. Um, I like at that point I despised them. I really disliked them for throughout those years. Hated them in fact. For a long time, and there was a part of me that was just like what, I can't do it. I have to stay. And that was my mindset. I have to stay. I can't leave. Because I thought if I leave, I was going to be the same as him.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So and it was weird. It was interesting because all of my friends, because it was quite toxic, like I said, a lot of my friends at the time were like, and my mum was like, why are you still in this relationship if you're so unhappy? You're so there's a lot of you're still arguing so much. There's always problems, and I was just like, I can't leave. Can't do that. Um, Now fast forward a couple of years, a lot of ups and downs. There's still a lot of cheating going on. Wasn't a very healthy relationship at all. After a couple of years, when it was my 22nd birthday, and I was on holiday with my partner at the time. We're in Bali, and we were there for my birthday. And what happened was we went over there. My son was about 2 years of age. We went over there, and the second day, the day, oh, it was my birthday. The day of my birthday, the morning of my birthday, I got a phone call. I was in Bali. We're in like this beautiful retreat. It was amazing, just soaking up the sun, having a few drinks, and I remember getting this phone call from my brother uh, who was at obviously back home in New Zealand, and he basically told me that our mum had been taken into hospital, because she was having a seizure. She was having seizures, and they had found a lump on her brain, a tumor, and they were doing had to do scans and stuff like that, and they found out that it was cancerous. On my birthday, I found this out, and that was a big game changer for me. I was, how do you react to that?
Yeah.
How do you deal with it? What do you do? And I was on holiday, and I was just like, just trying to trying to just act like I was on holiday. It was my birthday, and trying to act like everything was okay. But you know, at that point I was like quite scared, and because I'd been so suppressive of my emotions in the past, I just tried to suppress it. But I came home after that holiday, and it was very real after that. She was in hospital, um, and she was going to be in hospital for a while, so I had to, I had to, just kind of process all of that, and they basically gave her about, I think they gave her about just over a year to live. Um,
Wow.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
confronting, bro.
very confronting. And basically, what happened after that, I was in a bad headspace, and went into a bit of a depression, um, again. And me and my partner, because of that depression, obviously the I was becoming very aware of like all the negativity around me, especially in my relationship. Um, and it got to a point where I was, because the relationship was pretty toxic. I was living with her and her parents, and there's this one time. I'm not going to dive in so much into it, into what was
Yeah.
happening, but got into this pretty big argument with my partner and her family at the time. Um, this was all happening around the same time as I found out about my mum, and it was that same type of thing that happened where a few years back where I ran away from home. I had that rage kind of coming on,
Yeah.
that seeing red, it was kind of arising again, and it happened on and off, not to that extent where I destroy everything, but those behaviors would come up on and off. But this is a bit different because this time I was genuinely a victim. Like, I was not in the wrong in this point. Like, I was really doing my best to like provide for my my son, and I just wasn't getting the respect from anyone in that family at the time, unfortunately. And there was this point where I was arguing with these guys, this family, um, and it got to the point where I just like lost those. I just lost it. I didn't destroy everything, but I started yelling. And then they started yelling, and they were drunk, and it was this big argument at home. And let's be honest, this happens everywhere. You can imagine this happens everywhere because so many people have the same issues, right?
Yeah.
And my son was 2 at the time, and I remember I was like yelling at my partner, and she was yelling at me, and the mum was yelling at me, the dad was yelling at me, and everyone was yelling. And I remember my son woke up, he walked upstairs, and I remember him looking at me, and the look that he gave me was, I could see the same look that I had when I was a kid. It just looked like me. Like, he just looked like a little mini version of me when I was like 2 years of age.
Yeah.
And I just saw myself in him, and I saw what was going on, and I was just like, no, I can't do this. I can't be here, and I can't let this happen anymore because I know it's going to keep happening if I stay here. So I realized that, you know what, I'm going to leave. So I left, and I decided to, after 7 years, I decided to actually leave, and actually make that decision. And I packed my bags, and my friend at the time, who was one of my good mates at the time, he had, surprisingly enough, just broken up with one of his long-term partners, and he was just moving into a flat with a few friends. And I was like, you know what, if you need a room, you can come stay here for a while. So I just packed my bags and left. And
Okay.
this was at the end of 2000, and this was all when my mom had just been diagnosed. So this was 2014, I think it was 2014. Um, and then that was like another rock bottom for me because my mum had cancer. I couldn't go home. She was in hospital. Left my long-term relationship. Wasn't seeing my son, and I went down that same cycle again, bro. I went down that same
Yeah.
cycle of drugs and alcohol and all that kind of stuff. And um, I at that point I had saved heaps of money. I was doing really really well with business. That went out the window. I had about $10,000 saved up, spent it all. I stopped my business for a while, for about 3 or 4 months, and I just went down this like real dark rabbit hole.
Yep. I guess
And
looking
yeah,
back now, when we're talking about like you wanting to stay in this relationship to be that male role model, this father figure that you didn't have growing up,
mm,
looking back now, do you feel like it's possible for men to be that male role model or that father figure that instills the confidence while being separate from the relationship with the mum?
100%, 100%, man. And the way I look at it is, at the time, like the relationship that I was in, it wasn't unconditional love. There was no unconditional love there. It was the reason why the relationship was there was because for the wrong reasons, you know, and
Yeah,
because I was in the relationship for the wrong reasons. I couldn't be my best version of myself. I couldn't be the best me that I could live up to because that best me was constantly being undervalued and attacked, and there's all these. I couldn't be the best version of me, and because I couldn't be the best version of me, I couldn't be the best father. I
yeah,
was there, I was around, but I wasn't the best father I could be, just because I was there. So I realized that if I want to give my son the life that I want him to have, and that the life that he deserves, I need to be my best version of myself. And in this relationship, in this house, living with these people, I can't be that, And I realized, and that was the first time. It was a really, really hard decision to make, and took me months. That's why I went into such a deep depression, because I just so much self doubt, like there's so many parts of me that was like, you're just like your dad. He's running away, you can't handle it, you can't sort
yeah.
it out. But there was a part of me that was like, just keep going, just the reason why you left, you left for a reason. Don't go against that. You're better than this. So, um, so yeah, to answer your question, bro, 100%, I think you definitely can, and it's gotten to a point now where it's great. It took a long time to get here, but it's amazing. I'm on good terms with my ex, with his mom. Um, we're in a good place. I've got an amazing partner now. She's an amazing influence on my son. My son's 5. He's in school now. I'm able to teach him a lot of the things that I never got taught, and
Yeah,
it's amazing now. So yeah, to answer your question, bro, definitely.
it's awesome, bro. I think hold that mic close again.
Oh yeah.
I think we'll fast forward to your mum
Mm.
when
Yep.
she, like finally succumbs.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, basically what happened, bro, is a couple of years, after that, I got back on track. This is when I was about 23 at the time, so I was like, this is time. It's time for me to like really step up. Got a mentor. I invested in the mentor. Started my business again. Got back on track. Started my online business, and this was a couple of years. This is 2014, 2015, 16, the 2016. Um, and got back on track, and met my new partner around that same time as well. So that was going really well, and just building back up, bro. And it took a couple of years. When was it? It was, yeah, so 2 years, so 17, 15, 16, yeah. So it was like 2015 to 2017 was when my mum had cancer, and I had built up a pretty good life. I found a nice place on a nice side of town, had this partner, met my partner who I'm still with now, Sakula, and life was looking really good. But my mum was like slowly deteriorating. Obviously, she had to move into like a hospice, and that was honestly, those 2 years were very challenging for me. But looking back at it now, it all happened for a reason, because of that happening to my mum, and her having to go through that, it really forced me to take full responsibility. I had to. There was no. I realized at that point there is no one else that can do this apart from myself. And it became very, very clear to me. So it was my motive. It was my why behind everything. It was just I have to do this for to make my mum proud, and to look after myself, because I can't fall back on anyone now. I don't have a dad there. my mum's not going to be here forever, and I have to make this work. I have to make it. And it was really difficult, bro, because because of that motivation and that drive to succeed, I became very successful in what I did. I created this online business. I launched jessewynyardfitness.com. I became one of the top competitors in the country at the time, men's physique competitors. I was placing the top 2, top 3 at all my shows and all the national shows. I got heaps of sponsors. My social media following was growing. I had clothing sponsors and big supplement sponsors, and my business was doing really, really well. I bought the car that I wanted. I got my own place. All of these things. Making over 6 figures a year. It was really, life was really, really good. But in the background, my mum was slowly deteriorating. And it got to a point where this was last year in her final few months, where we had to go and look after her. We had to take turns going in to look after her at the hospice, and just watching her, what chemotherapy does to people. Like seeing how it deteriorates them, and the side effects. I would always witness her having seizures, and when she had a seizure, I had to learn how to deal with it, like what to do. She would faint on me, she would black out, and I'd have to catch her so she wouldn't like crack her head open.
Scary.
Yeah, and that was like that for like a good year. I had to live with that multiple times per week while doing all this other stuff on the side. And then the final few months, it got to a point where she was bedridden. She didn't talk. She stopped talking. She didn't recognize me anymore. It got to a point where I'd go in and she wouldn't even look at you. She wouldn't even look at me. She wouldn't look at anyone. She was just staring into the distance. And it was really difficult, bro, because there's not one point, I think, in any part of society where you get taught to deal with that. And I just had to deal with it as I went along, and at the same time I was helping so many other people, and that was kind of like a overcompensation for like what I was like really having to deal with on the inside.
Yeah.
And then exactly 2 years later, July, what was it, this was last year, July the 7th, she passed away. Yeah, and then that's when the journey began, like the real journey began. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's I can't even imagine that, bro. Like obviously having to deal with looking after her and knowing that you're going to lose her, but actually having to deal with, I guess, losing her while she's still, in a sense, with you, while she's still in her body, her not knowing who you are. That must be like heart wrenching.
It was, yeah, definitely the most challenging thing I've had to go through, bro. And even I remember there was times where I'd just go in and just be in a room and I'd just break down crying because I just didn't know how to deal with it. And it was difficult because I got a lot of anxiety around this time because I was constantly waiting for that phone call. I was waiting for that phone call. Oh, she's passed away. And because as a coach, I've been someone that's always really opened up, like constantly opened up to my clients, and I think that's one of the reasons why people resonate with me so much, is because I've had that ability to share what I'm going through with people. But because I had done that, I knew that everyone knew about it. Everyone knew about it. So whenever I saw people, whenever I'd go into the gym, whenever I'd ever go anywhere, I'd have anxiety attacks because I thought that everyone was like, looking at me in that, like worrying about me and just looking at me in that way. So I remember for a good solid like 6 to 8 months, I had these anxiety attacks where, if I would go into a public place and if I would feel any type of stress, my entire body would heat up, and I would get like a rash over my body, like actual physical manifestations of anxiety, and I couldn't even train. I went into the gym. I could barely train. Like I'd be training and like my whole body would just flush out, and I would just have to like go and like hop in a cold shower, and
That's
it was
crazy, man.
yeah, it was really difficult, bro. And that lasted quite a while after she passed away as well. Yeah.
Okay. And did you fall back into that depressive state after she passed, or did it
So
spur you on to like develop and like what you'd done before is fall into that self development to actually build yourself back up to the person you wanted to be?
a bit of both, bro. Bit of both. Um, Definitely a bit of both. There was a lot of anger that was there, that was still there, that unresolved anger from my childhood that just was still around. Um, I remember there was this one point where, and this is the first time I've really like experienced, suicidal thoughts. Was
Yeah.
that like, um, a little bit later on, like just a little, about a few months later, where I was just, in my mind, I thought that it was my fault because the cancer that she had was a brain tumor, and she was super healthy. She was like a vegan, plant-based diet, real
Well,
alcohol focused, real healthy. But it was pretty clear that it was either genetic or stress induced. Like as one of the only forms of like uh, toxicity in her body that could have caused it. Acidity in her body. So I created the scenario in my mind that it was my fault, because of all the stress that I caused her. Had a lot of guilt that I was like suppressing, and yeah, it got to the point where it was getting quite dark, in my mind. The positive was that I had my partner, and she was super supportive throughout the whole process. She was constantly helping me. I had a really good circle of influence. I had mentors. I had just really good friends that were able to help me. And honestly, that's what helped me through it. And I did go into a depression. I didn't handle it the same way I handled it in the previous times because I had a business, I had clients.
yeah,
So I didn't go down that same road of chucking everything away and just giving up. It was a different kind. It was a different kind of low. It was pretending to be someone, pretending to be okay when I wasn't. That's
yeah.
what it was. And I created this persona of like, everything's all good. Um, you know, this coach, this speaker, because I was doing a lot of speaking at the time, seminars and stuff, and I was acting as if I had already overcome it. I was
Okay.
acting as if, and I was acting as if I had already learned the lessons, that I needed to learn from it, and I was gone as in the past. But there was a lot of stuff that I still had to deal with, that was within myself.
Wow,
So yeah,
it's crazy, man, and it's powerful.
yeah, bro.
Um, Especially considering how many people you're helping at the moment.
Mm, yep.
Yeah, I feel a lot of people look for the easy way out, and the easy way out is pretending that you have overcome something when you actually haven't. And the
Yep.
only time that really comes out is when, like, you have those rage attacks, or
Hmm.
when what you've been suppressing, the emotion, comes out in like slips of tongue. I think, as Sigmund Freud says.
Mm, exactly, exactly, bro. So
Um,
yeah.
I guess what I want to move on to, bro, is like, I guess I say is you've been through a shitload. You went through the abusive father. Um, Shit, you had the uncertainty, the comparison in childhood. You had running away from home and having that outburst, going through depression, anxiety, aggression, the toxic relationship, having the son, and then losing the future you thought you were going to have or create for yourself. Um, the alcohol abuse, and then obviously having your mum pass away, which I can't even imagine how you overcome that one. But I think we touched on a few tips, tools, or tactics or modalities that you used when we were messaging beforehand. And I just want to sort of run through each of those and how you implement them and what sort of area of your life they helped you.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, the first one is meditation.
100%. So I've been meditating for a long time. When I was working on the cruise ships, I had to get qualified in a beginner yoga course. So I taught yoga when I was on the cruise ships, and
Cool.
I did yoga for quite a while, and I learned about meditation, mindfulness, and it was something I learned when I was about 19. And I dabbled in. I wasn't like a full-on practice that I was committed to, because my values were different back in those days.
Yeah.
But I had started to do it. I started to really do it again, because I understood that I needed to find ways to quieten my mind. Quieten my overthinking mind, all of these like negative thoughts and that were still present, even though I wasn't showing them. I had to find a way to relax them and center myself. So meditation was something that I picked up again. And one of my friends at the time, just after my mum passed away, one of my really good friends that I've known for quite a while now, who went through very similar experiences to me. He had just come back to New Zealand at the time, and he had been gone for about a couple of years. He came back and he was like a completely different person, right? I said the whole energy about him had changed, and I was just like, this guy's just so different now. He's so different. He's so relaxed and he's so calm, and he's not stressed out about much anymore.
Yeah.
And I saw that, and I just started hanging out with him again, and he was talking about meditation and breath work, and he was talking about how he had spent a lot of time with some gurus and quite spiritual teachers when he was in Australia. And I was, at the time, I was open to anything, so I got back into meditation, and I started doing it again. And then I started utilizing breath work as well.
Cool.
I started, researching into like Wim Hof. Wim Hof was a big mentor figure in my life, and learning about the Wim Hof method and the breathing techniques that he used, and I started practicing them. And the crazy thing that I learned about, the breath work is, it was really helping me, because when you dive a little bit more into the science behind what actually happens with breath work and meditation, a lot of these, what I came to learn is a lot of these stresses, traumas that we go through, emotional traumas, they're stored within the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is connected to the nervous system within the body. So the subconscious mind is essentially the body. So when we have trauma and when we have suppressed emotions, which I had obviously a shitload of, it was all stored within the body. It's like literally like in different areas, and it creates these emotional blockages within the body. If these blockages aren't resolved in one's life, then what can happen is it can turn into disease. Like it can physically manifest into a cancer or an organ problem, or whatever it might be. Hernias. It can create so many different types of problems depending on what kind of suppressed emotion it was. And I had a lot of it. So with breath work, what it does is it helps you, as you're going through the breathing techniques and you're taking in heaps of oxygen and you're releasing it, you're over oxygenating the body. So you're alkalizing all the cells within your body. And because you're over oxygenating your body, and the oxygen travels through the bloodstream, it has a direct impact on your autonomic nervous system. And when it can have an impact, when it can start to control your autonomic nervous system, you can start to actually release a lot of these suppressed emotions. So I started practicing this breath work, and for someone that's not familiar with meditation, that has been through a lot of traumatic experience in their past, it's scary. It's scary for people to close their eyes and dive into their mind, because there's so much shit in there, right? And it took a while for me to really get to a point where I was able to like embrace it properly. But yeah, meditation and breath work were and is one of the major is the tool. If there's any tool to choose to overcome this kind of stuff, any type of mental health problem, it's meditation. Because you give yourself the mental ability to be able to bring yourself into the present moment. Depression is when your conscious and your subconscious mind is attached to the past. Anxiety is when it's attached to the future. So when you can train the mental ability and the mental muscle to bring yourself into that present moment, while also releasing a lot of these suppressed emotions within the body at the same time, you start to change. You
That's
start
powerful,
to
man.
start to really your level of consciousness starts to raise. You start to see life in a different way. You start to look at others in a different way. You start to look at yourself in a different way. Because in order to be able to get to that stillness, in order to be able to get to that peace of mind, what the Buddhists call inner peace, or they call it, I can't remember the phrase that they use for it. They call it nirvana. So nirvana in Buddhism, they call nirvana is translated into a word that's similar to heaven, right? And what nirvana really is it's a state of being. It's heaven on earth. It's being in a pure state of peace and relaxation, and not relaxation like sit on the couch and watch TV. Relaxation, like true, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual peace. And in order to be able to get to that point, you need to be able to break yourself down, to the very core. You need to be able to let go of your ego. You need to be able to let go of these thoughts, let go, transcend the emotions. And you need to be able to detach from all of that to be able to get to that point. And without being able to detach from those things, detach from your ego, your persona, your job, your everyday stresses, expectations from society, all of these different things, you have to be able to let it go. And once you can let it go and get into that state of mind, then, like I said, you start to change. And the more you're able to tap in to that inner peace, that nirvana, that heaven mind state, then it slowly starts to transcend into all the other aspects of your life. You start to live like that. You start to become like that in every moment of your day. And like I said, your consciousness shifts. You become more aware, more present.
That's awesome, bro. And that's what meditation is. It really just gives you the ability to choose what it is you focus on, what you think about. And if, like you said, depression is focusing on the past, or anxiety is focusing on the future, if you meditate, then you can literally choose to focus on the present, which is where we're meant to remain, in that consciously. And for anyone who doesn't know, when you're talking about the breath work and breathing in autonomic nervous system, really, like when you're breathing into the diaphragm and the belly, you're activating that autonomic nervous system. It's just like referring to that state we go into, rest and digest, or rest and relax.
Well, in the program, so ever since doing all of this stuff, I decided to, because obviously it was changing my life, right? So I was like, I need to help people with this. So I became, I started doing courses. I did transcendental meditation courses. I did breathwork courses.
Wow.
I started doing NLP courses so I can learn more about the subconscious mind. I started diving into, different spiritual practices. I started, meditating with monks, every single week. I started just
Sick,
really diving into it and learning from as many people as I can. And I decided to implement it all into my program, and that's what Awaken the Alpha is. It's a combination of the mind, body, soul, and how to integrate them all together to become the best version of yourself. And where was I going with that? I can't even remember where I was going with that. But
sounds like a lot of value, bro. Fuck me.
I remember what I was going to say. So what I was saying before, like what you were saying, to get to that, once you're able to, breathe into the diaphragm, bring yourself into the present moment, learning into diving more into the research behind what's actually happening is, you're physically changing your state of mind by doing this. So it's not just like a concept. It's like, oh yeah, focus on the present. It's actually when in most of our everyday experience, we're in a beta brainwave state, right? So our brainwave activity is oscillating between, anywhere between 15 to 30 hertz. And when we're able to center the mind, what happens, and we still the mind, we slow the brainwave activity down, we get into towards like 7 to 14 hertz. Then we get into what we call the alpha state, right? And that's that state of that full present state of mind, and that's what they call the alpha state of mind. And the main focus for a lot of my clients, and what I really focus on with them is giving them as many techniques and rituals and routines that they can implement into their lifestyles. It's very simple to help them be in that state of mind as much as possible. Because like I said, the more you can put yourself into the alpha state, the more you live in the alpha state. And it's one of the reasons why we call it Awaken the Alpha, because it's not only alpha, does that mean becoming a leader of your own life, but it also directly correlates to the brainwave activity that you can achieve through many of these mental techniques.
It's awesome, bro. I constantly, whenever I'm meditating, when I wake up, I do my lymphocytes. I jump on my rebounder and bloody do my affirmations, say them out loud, and I'll do my meditation. I use a deep theta wave, so that I'm constantly mimicking that theta wave, becoming suggestible in that mind state, because that's a state you're in when you first wake up or just as you're going off to sleep. So it's awesome to hear you talking about using that alpha brainwave state to actually help people awaken and become the best version of themselves, which is super powerful.
Definitely, bro. Definitely, 100%.
Um, Talking about breath work, I only learnt maybe a month ago from a guest, Tim Morrison, that with breath work you can actually release DMT naturally, which is a good segue, I think, into another modality you talked about, which was psychedelics.
Hmm. Yep. 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 Good topic to talk about, bro.
Cool, go for it,
um,
Gus.
so yeah, man. Like, well, yeah, you're right. When you do, different types of breath work. You got different types of breath work. So you've got you got regular breathing techniques, which is can take you do 10 deep breaths, breathing in through your nose, out through the mouth into the diaphragm, like you said. The Wim Hof method is very similar to the Alpha State method, which is a method that I created and put into my program, and I recorded a whole bunch of guided audios that I give my clients, which takes about 10 minutes. So the 10-minute ones is you're going for about instead of doing 10 breaths or 50 breaths, you go for about 200 deep breaths
Well,
into the belly, and that's when you can really start to tap into that emotion, the suppressed emotion. That's when you can start to tap into, like open up the heart center and increase your vibration. You start, you can potentially cry, and you start to feel that love that's within you, that peace that's within you. And then there's types of breath work called holotropic breath work, which I've practiced a lot myself, and that's probably what your other friend was talking about. And holotropic breath work is when you do this for 20, 30 minutes up to an hour of deep breathing,
yeah,
deep, intentional, conscious breathing. And I do this, I run workshops where I take people through this, and people have amazing experiences. And essentially what's happening is, your pineal gland is activated, basically, which in a lot of the spiritual Eastern philosophies is the third eye. Um, and your pineal gland starts producing shitloads of this DMT, and DMT is obviously a chemical that essentially allows you to experience hallucinogenic and psychedelic um, sensory experiences, and that is, by psychedelics has been something that I've dabbled in a lot, just as a kid. You kind of just do any kind of drug, really.
yep.
um, and I used to do it when I was a kid, and you kind of take some mushies or you take some LSD and you kind of just trip out a little bit, right? um, and I never really understood, what was actually going on. Um, but then when I started to dive into this meditation and breath work, I was having very profound experiences. I was having very profound experiences where I was, seeing things and experiencing, colors and symbols and overwhelming senses of joy. And I really got fascinated with the topic of consciousness. Like, what is this? There's obviously so much that I've that I haven't been able to tap into. Throughout my life, I've had a lot of lucid dreams as well. So I've had a lot of very out of it experiences, that I've experienced. I've always been very open and very um, interested, curious as to what you know what what is actually
Oh,
happening.
sorry, Cuzzy, I lost you for a bit there.
You still there? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
I
I think
What was
I
the last thing you heard
lost
me
you.
say?
Maybe I think you were talking about um, wondering whether there was more you hadn't tapped into.
Oh, yep, yep. So, throughout my life, from a very young age, I had a lot of lucid dream experiences. So, really intense dream experiences where I'm conscious in my dream. When I was studying Buddhism, they talk a lot about the dream state, which is essentially like the theta state, the delta brainwave activity. When you start to release this chemical naturally, and um, it got a point where I was just, I really wanted to like dive into a little bit more. I've heard a lot of people talking about psychedelics, whether it's mushrooms or LSD or, one of the more intense versions of like pure DMT, and all the way up into, ayahuasca and these plant medicines that they do in the Amazon and different, parts of the world. I just got really fascinated in it. And earlier this year, I did um, I decided to do it. A couple of my friends are on the same path, and we decided to do it together. And it was the first time I had done a psychedelic with this new level of awareness, this new
Yeah.
level of consciousness. And because I've obviously been practicing through meditation and all these things, so earlier this year I started doing it again. And I remember I did, I think it was LSD. We did this, had a couple of LSD tabs, and we did it. And during the trip, I decided to do breath work. I decided to do some meditation because I was just like, let's see what happens. And that was the first time that I experienced something that wasn't in the physical realm. I experienced higher dimensions, I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
And that was a game changer for me, because you hear about people talk about it, you see people talk about it on, like, the podcasts, and you read about it in books, and it's a you hear about it, but when you actually experience different dimensions, different higher levels of consciousness, and you experience that, um, it's a big game changer, and you start to really it starts to really open you up to what is actually going on in this universe that we live in, and how this reality works, and what we are, and what our potential is. So psychedelics have been a big teacher for me, and um, I don't do it all the time. Obviously, it's not something that I do all day, every day. I've dabbled in microdosing and stuff like that before, but I feel like when the time comes, when I feel like it needs to happen, the opportunity presents itself. The universe finds a way for it to happen, and every single time that I do it, um, there are massive breakthrough experiences, and I leave that experience on a whole new level, a whole brand new level of understanding, awareness, consciousness. It's almost like you get the opportunity to tap into the infinite source of energy, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. You get a
Yeah.
direct contact with it, and you're able to download this into your system. And when you download that, when you experience those experiences, every time you meditate, every time you do breath work, it's a completely different experience. You're just slowly peeling back the layers, and you understand yourself on a deeper level. You're more aware of yourself, and yeah, man, it's been a game changer for me. And I'm really hoping that over these next couple of years, that it's the way society perceives these substances changes, because a lot of people look at them in negative ways, and they definitely can have negative effects, if they're not done in the right environment, and if you're not in the right headspace to do it, they can definitely have negative effects, but they can definitely be used as medicine. And I would say, out of all the things that I've done, um, some of the biggest breakthroughs and realizations that I've had about myself and about life and about the universe has come from those experiences.
That's amazing, brother. I think I'll do a few questions, a couple about that one, and then we'll wrap up. Sort of
Sweet, bro.
taking a lot more of your time than I thought we would. But
Yeah, we have. That's all good, bro.
um, with that, when you're talking about that realization you had with the psychedelics,
Mm.
and talking about it allowed you to see what we are.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think we are?
What do I mean by that? So the first, I mean, there's a lot of experiences I've had, doing different things, but one of the big ones was right at the beginning of the year. It was January this year, and um, this is the first time I've done breath work on it. And when you do breath work, especially when you do like holotropic breath work, you're doing a lot of, deep breathing. So you're breathing in and breathing out, and if you're conscious breathing, you're letting go, right? You're letting go of a lot of negativity. That's the concept that you're going through in your
Yeah.
mind, right? So I was going through this in a psychedelic state, and I was letting go of all these, I was just letting go, breathing, and then, and when you're doing like the Wim Hof method or the Alpha State method, which is the one that I've created, you do about 100 breaths, and then you let all the oxygen out of your body. And I'm not too sure if you've done the Wim Hof method
Yeah.
before, but your body starts vibrating, right? You probably felt that whole oxygenation feel of like the tingling sensations. And the longer that you do the breath work for, the more heightened that experience is, to the point where it can become out of body. If you do holotropic breath work, where you go for like 20, 30 minutes at a time, you can have out of body experiences from it, because you literally detach the consciousness from the body. And I did that on a psychedelic state. So what happened was I was going through this process of letting go, letting go, letting go. And then in that moment, I realized when I let go and my whole body was vibrating, I couldn't feel my body, it wasn't there. I got taken into the space of awareness where I could see myself as it's really difficult to explain, but I could see myself in the universe. And what I mean by that is when I was in my mind and my whole body was vibrating, it was like I could see multiple different dimensions. And what I mean by that is wherever I shifted my awareness, I could manifest something visually and emotionally and mentally, and I can experience it. And I could literally see myself, and I could see all the different parts of myself. I could see the ego. That was a massive one. There was a big breakthrough. Was I could see the ego and how the ego controlled everything, basically.
Yeah.
And I could see how the ego was developed over my entire life, and I could see how it was manipulating my behaviors, my habits. I could see how it was it birthed self-doubt and fear. I could see it was all stemming from that. And because I was going through the conscious process of letting go during the breath work, I let go of the ego, and it was the first time I've actually let it go. Like up until that point, you can talk about letting go of the ego and having an ego death experience, but until you actually let go of the ego fully for a moment,
Yep.
you can never really understand that. And it was the first time I let go of it, and I understood that, you know, that in that moment I realized that we're not just this human body, we're not just this physical body, we're not just, you know, this vehicle that we are in this three-dimensional physical realm. When we die, what happens? And for all the spiritual teachings of research through and all the experiences that I've been through, I realized that the universe that we live in is, it's a lot more than this physical realm. The physical realm is a part of it, but there are higher dimensions, and in a lot of these higher dimensions, in quantum physics, they talk about the quantum field of potentiality, or the infinite realm of potentiality. And what this basically means is, there is a space, and where, all around us, constantly happening, which is the space of everything that's happened in the past, everything that has happened now, and that everything has happened in the future. Any potential that you can think of has happened in this infinite space. And this is essentially our imagination, right? When we
Yep.
imagine something, we're kind of tapping into it a little bit, but it's there always. And when you're able to, when you go into dream states, for example, when you dream, you go into the state where when you're in this world almost of, infinite possibilities. And a lot of the ancient traditions, they call this the Akashic records. You know, you might refer to this as the God force. A lot of ancient philosophers call this God or the God force. But there is this intelligence that is not running. There's this intelligence that is flowing through everything. It's allowing our autonomic nervous system to run by itself. It's allowing the trees outside to grow. It's allowing the water to flow. It's allowing life, chemicals to reproduce. It's allowing everything to happen. There's this intelligence, and there's this that is manipulating and controlling it. Is flowing through it. And a lot of the Eastern philosophies, they call this like the life force. And when you're breathing, you're inhaling the life force, and you're flowing it through the body, and that's what creates the energy flow within the body, right? So I realized this, and I realized that our consciousness is an expression, or an individualized expression, expressing through this physical body, right? So if you
Yep.
imagine if it's a paint a picture of it, if you were to imagine like a sphere, right? A sphere of infinity, and outside the sphere there are all these little mini spheres, and these mini spheres represent human beings, all right, or planets, or animals, or trees, or whatever living thing that you wanna look at.
Yep.
And this infinity ball is expressing through these little physical vehicles. So if you think of consciousness as this infinite life force energy that has infinite potentiality, and you think of these human beings with these brains and these nervous systems and this everything that we are as almost antennas that are able to, flow the consciousness through us, then we have the ability to be able to, use things like meditation, use techniques like breath work and psychedelics, or whatever the tool is that you want to use, to be able to tap into that flow, that state of consciousness, and flow through it. And that's where essentially a lot of what I learn and what I teach comes from, that source, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's awesome, brother.
Yeah, bro. So, and as someone that grew up religious, I grew up as a Christian. I strayed away from the actual religious side of it when I was about 15, 16. But, for someone that's had a relationship with God for a long time, and always questioned what God was, and, who he is, and is it a person outside of ourselves? And I always thought it was like a person outside of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
But what I've come to realize is, God, and they say this in a lot of the, the ancient religions and philosophies, is within you, right? God is within you.
Yeah.
God is within us. Whether you're religious or not doesn't really matter. You don't have to think of it as God. You can think of it as energy, but it's essentially the same. It's the same thing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
So,
and that's why he doesn't call himself God. He just says, I am. And that's why I am is always, in bold in all the ancient scriptures.
and if you look at, like, some of the greatest people of all time, you look at Jesus Christ, right? An amazing person. I've been researching a lot into Jesus Christ recently, and you look at what he actually did and where he went to learn. There's a big part of his life where he was, potentially, and this isn't fact, this is just from what I've researched, but, where he spent, years and years and years, with some of the ancient masters, and some of these ancient masters that lived in the Himalayas and these eastern parts of the world. These guys live up to over 500 years old, and when you learn about these people, that people once upon a time were able to get to a point where they lived for over 500 years of age, and then you start to learn about as to how they did it. It comes down to a lot of what the more recent, quantum physicists and neuroscientists, like Dr. Joe Dispenza is one of them. I don't know if you follow his stuff, but they talk a lot about this intelligence, and what we have the ability to manifest. We have the ability to heal ourselves. We have all these amazing abilities as human beings, but society that we live in really, really takes us away from that. So
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's something I've read quite frequently. It's a book I read over and over called The Master Key System. And it was a course that was turned into a book, but it was originally written in like 1906 or 1912. And this was like a 21-week course where they went through visualization, teaching you that you can regenerate cells, but it's only negativity that deteriorates you. And if you stay out of negativity, then you remain in a state where your cells are constantly reproducing.
Well, if you think about it, our lives are dictated by our thoughts, right? And our thoughts are often products of memories from the past. So everything that we go through, which is often traumatic, creates negative thoughts, which creates negative, reality on the outside, but also affects us on an internal physiological, level. It affects our chemistry. So, what most people think that we're going to die one day. Most people have that belief ingrained into them that we're going to die one day, and I guess we are, because we believe that. But what I read a book very similar to what you're talking about, and this book was called the Life and Teachings of the Masters from the Far East. It was another book that was written in the late 1800s of a group of philosophers that went to the Himalayas and spent time with these masters that are able to go out of body.
Sorry, brother. Lost you at them going to the Himalayas and learning.
Okay, cool, sweet. Just to let you know, bro, my laptop might die. It's got 10 minutes left, but yeah.
Okay, we'll do the story, and then we'll wrap up with a few quick questions.
Sweet, bro. So, yeah, this book, Life and Teachings of the Masters from the Far East, group of philosophers that go into the mountains, and they basically they spend time with the masters, these guys that have lived for hundreds of years and thousands of years, guys that have that know Jesus Christ, guys that know the Buddha, all these
Yep.
guys that have had big influences on these, and these people, many of these people apparently are still alive. You know, that still live up there in the mountains, in these parts of the world. The things that these people are able to do, teleportation, you know, astral projection on demand, telekinesis, all these amazing abilities that they have, and this infinite amount of wisdom. And you know, I read this book, and I'll send it to you so you can listen to it, bro.
Cool.
It's an amazing
Cheers, bro.
book. And you know, one thing that one of these masters said in this book is the reason why we can live for so long is because we have a deep knowing that we are immortal, right? Now think about that for a second. If you understand the concept of consciousness and you understand the concept of energy and God and infinity and you know, the infinite life force, if you understand that on a deep level, infinity means immortality, right? It's never begins and never ends. It's just constant, and we are an expression of that. So if you understand that, and not just understand it, but know it, like for a deep knowing within yourself that, you know, that this is what I am, then you can manipulate, you can heal yourself, you can change your chemistry because you know that you can. And that's what I've been practicing over these last kind of 4 to 6 months, is, you know, developing that knowing, because it's a concept at the end of the day. We understand the concept, but the more, you know, you practice things like the manifestation, and in order to be able to manifest something, you have to know that it's already happened, and you have to be grateful for that it's already happened. So, you know, just learning concepts like this, you know, really, you know, puts things all together. You know, it really puts things all together.
That's
and
cool, man.
You apply it into your life, and then yeah, I'll send you the book, bro. You can have a listen to it.
That's super cool. I vibe 100% with that. Couple quick questions and we'll wrap up. What would you say the quality of your life is like now, knowing everything you've been through?
Honestly, bro, it's amazing, man. Like I said at the beginning of the call, like life is amazing. Life isn't easy. It's never going to be easy. There's always going to be challenges. But I've gotten to a point where every adversity, every challenge, every negative behavior, every negative habit that does arise, I am at a very advanced level of awareness to be able to quickly learn the lesson without having to suffer. I used to suffer for a long time. I used to have to experience pain before I learned a lesson. So that could be weeks, months, even years at times. But when I experience any type of adversity now, which we all do, I see it in a different way. And, you know, it's almost like I'm grateful for the challenges that come along now, because I know that there's a lesson that I need to learn, you know, that comes from that. The reason why I'm experiencing pain is because there's resistance within myself. So because I have that understanding and that knowing within myself, I really enjoy it, like every single moment of the day. You know, I'm so grateful for everything. I'm grateful for what I've got in my life. I'm grateful for what I've been through, and I'm grateful for all the things that I'm currently manifesting that are being attracted into my life at this very moment. So life's amazing, bro, and
That's
I'm
awesome, man.
excited.
What are you most grateful for right now?
What I'm most grateful for right now is honestly just getting to a point where, you know, getting to a place in my life, you know, especially after having this conversation with you, getting to a place in my life where, you know, I've got an amazing home, I've got an amazing partner, I've got an amazing son, you know, I've got more than enough money to live a life that I want. I'm helping people, and I'm constantly learning within myself, and I can see people around me learning the same things, and the energy in this on this planet right now is, you know, slowly rising, you know, and you can feel it. You see it when you watch podcasts, you see it, you have it when you have conversations. I think the next few years, you know, for what we have, the next couple of decades that we have in store for us is going to be pretty cool, bro. We're going to witness some pretty amazing things. So I'm just grateful for everything, man. I'm grateful for my life.
That's awesome, bro. Last question. If you had the chance to put a message on a billboard somewhere, you know, thousands of people would see it, what would that message be?
Bro, my laptop just died. So if I stop talking, bro, I'm so sorry.
All
But I'm
good,
still
Kazi.
here right now. If I had a